Good afternoon, everyone. And as you know, my name is Zenzi Sewa, and I am the host of Spiritual Infinity. And today, my guest is Tigrilla Gardenia. Beautiful name. And just before we started the recording, I was asking her about it, and she was going into it, and I said, "Stop, we'll talk about it live." So, Tigrilla, beautiful. Whereabouts are you at the moment? Where are you based?
I am based in what we call the first city of Damanhur, which is one of the largest spiritual communities in the world. And we are located in northern Italy. So I am kind of in the Piedmont region at the base, kind of at the foothills of the Alps in northern Italy.
Oh, yeah. When you say the foothill at the Alps, do you wake up each morning and look at the Alps?
I do. I have a beautiful, I just went on a long walk. I have a beautiful river in front of me. We're in the Valcusella Valley. And when I go down and I turn around, there are the Alps right there.
And my guest yesterday, he was in Colorado and he was by the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And he had just been walking. And now you've just been walking in London.
You can walk a lot in London. It's just not the same.
You're right. It's not the same. That lovely, clean Alp air or mountain, it's not the same.
Not the same.
Okay, Tigrilla. Well, as you know, with Spiritual Infinity, it is about asking people about their journey and how they connected to their spirituality, and to share it with the world, because we're all going through different things. Lots of us are confused and want help. So it's about speaking up in this time of mankind and sharing, so that maybe people may connect or see something that will help them through their lives. So without much ado, Tigrilla, how did you connect to your spirituality? How did it start?
So I'm one of those people that got banged over the head a few times by, spirit, who said, hello, are you ever going to pay attention to me? Which, when I tell you this story, it'll make sense in a second. So, because I grew up, so as you can tell, I don't have an Italian accent because I'm originally from South Florida, from the United States. So I'm a good old fashioned Miami girl. And the beauty of living in Miami as a Cuban American is the fact that we have, besides the fact of a lot of energy and a lot of spunk, also a lot of like spirituality. It's kind of, it's embedded into the overall kind of way of being, which means, some people are going to church, but other people are going to different kinds of metaphysical things. And, there's always a little santeria somewhere hidden around. And so I grew up kind of with lots of stuff around me. Yeah. And my mother in particular spent many, many years of her life just exploring. I mean, she was a driver in a Jewish school, and my brothers were technically Baptist and I was technically Catholic because of the time that I was born, but we never really went to church. And then my mother did metaphysics. So she was always around people who were of different things. But at the same time, my mother at some point made a choice that said, I'm going to be religious. She decided to become Baptist because she was like, I need rules. She wanted rules. And that was the way that she went.
Some kind of
discipline, exactly, and structure. And she's still very open. Like, she and I have wonderful, wonderful conversations, because it's not my religion is what everybody should be, but it's my religion fits for me. Yeah. And then we can talk, because I can map out what she's talking to me about using other spiritual practices. And so we have wonderful conversations about all these different things. But, I grew up with all of this, but nothing particular. And of course, as a child, you dabble in a little bit of everything. You play a little with tarot with friends, you study a little Wicca over here. Then as you get older, I start hearing things about like Kabbalah, and you go to the library and you check a book out, and you're all these types of things, but nothing really stuck into it until I went, typical corporate route. I, graduate. I have a degree in music engineering and electrical engineering, which already was odd enough to get to, but that's another story. And then I come off and I went straight into kind of the beginning of the internet. And so it was risky, but at the same time, it was safe because it was still sort of corporate-y and all these types of things. Ended up in Microsoft at some point, because I had been in the arts for a long time and then had stepped into the tech world through the arts. I, at some point, have the kind of perfect ideal life, the husband, he had children, I had a great job, he had a great job, we had the house, we had the whole 9 yards. And I'm just like, and now what? And so in between all this, I started to act because I was kind of like, again, I had a degree in music. I had been around the arts, and all of a sudden I was in this suburban sort of life, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do something for myself. So I was taking singing lessons, and I started to do acting lessons, and I started to do plays. And so I kind of got back into this scene. To make a really long story short, I ended up getting cast into a performance that was in the middle of this big party. And I knew nothing about the party world. I wasn't a part of that world. I didn't understand it. But it was a friend of mine who I had worked with previous that was a director. And he was like, oh my God, you're going to love this. So I came into it, and all of a sudden my world opened. Here are all these like hippie kids, you know, who are having all this fun, and they're doing things, and they're not worried about money the way that we are. They don't have a lot of stuff, but they've got this creativity and this spark. And so, needless to say, my life starts to change. And I particularly make really good friends with this one particular artist who happens to be a part of a mystery school. And I was like, what does that mean? You know, I knew nothing. And I was, of course, very kind of technical, scientific, and very open, but at the same time with a mind that likes, give me it in a way that makes sense. And so he said to me, you're going to love my teacher. And she's the one you have to talk to, because she was in the middle of doing her PhD in physics. And she was working on the DNA of crystals, and she was an alchemist, and she was like already a teacher in this mystery school. And I was like, oh my God, sign me up for that. So she and I became really good friends. You might know her because you'll see her. It's funny. We both ended up after 20 years on the same episode on a Gaia Divine Science, because her name is Dr. Teresa Bullard. And so Teresa and I were like really good friends for a long time. And then we went down separate ways because we went down different schools. But anyways, so I ended up coming into my spirituality through that, where it was this mystery school with this hermetic magic, and then the Kabbalah, and that was it. That was my map to the world. Yeah. So it opened me to the idea of these building blocks of energy around the universe, the way that the universe gets developed. And I really went heads, like just totally into it. So I was producing events. I left, obviously, the corporate world. I'm producing events. I'm back in the art scene, which is helping me express all of my spirituality through these creative methods. And then, you know, end up co-owning a circus, end up going on tour with Cirque du Soleil with my partner. I have like a really bizarre background, and it goes from like into corporate things, but always in a creative, artistic sort of way. Anyways, to make another long story super short, I end up in Spain, and then I come to Italy because Teresa Bullard's sister, Christina, ends up inviting me to come to Italy. She was on her way to Italy, and she had stopped by to visit me. And she's like, why don't we all go to Italy together and have like a girls' weekend at this place that I keep hearing about, Dom and Her. And so we come, and I mean, Dom and Her is, I call it Hogwarts for adults, because that's what it is. I mean, we have an underground temple that's considered the 8th wonder of the world, or the first wonder of the new world, that is completely carved by hand into a mountain. And so we come here, we end up, I had already heard about Dom and Her in different ways. It had kind of been in my periphery, but I had never thought about going. And Christina was like, yeah, let's just go. Let's go experience it. Synchronicity happened. We get there, and we're going through these temples of humankind into these halls. And I don't know why. I walked into one of the halls, and I guess because I used to teach, you know, I was teaching Kabbalah at this time, sacred geometry. I was, you know, also astral travel, things like that. And I walked in this hall, and I'm like, this is the hall that's going to tell me if all this is bull. Like, if this is bull, I'm going to feel it in this hall. And I walk into this hall, which is the hall of water. And all of a sudden I'm looking around, I'm hearing these chimes, I'm looking at all these symbols on the walls. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is real. Like, this is what it's like to live your spirituality 24/7. Like, this is next level, you know, people who are really doing the work for humanity together, who have chosen this path. And I was like, that's so cool. Anyways, I come home, and my mother calls me, and she's like, oh my God, please don't tell me you're moving again. Because I used to move around countries at this time. And I'm like, no, I'm happy in Spain. I'm fine. I'm all great. Yeah, right. My roommate tells me I'm leaving the country. You have to come, like, you have to find a new place to live. And then I get a phone call from somebody in Dom and Her in the first city, who says to me, hey, I worked it out so that you can come and live here for 6 months to work on a project with us, because we really need you. And I was like, 6 months. I can do 6 months, then come back to Barcelona. I was happy in Barcelona. I thought I was going to stay in Barcelona. That was 15 years ago, and I am still here. Still here. I'm still here. So obviously, yeah, I found home. Hogwarts became home.
Okay, can I go just recap on something, because you said you had the corporate life, you had the husband, the children, the home.
Yeah.
What happened to the children?
Well, it's not my children, it was his children.
Oh,
So,
right.
and they were very small at the time. I mean, we were together when they were still very young. So, you know, we separated beautifully, amicably as friends. Like he kind of understood what was going on and realized that wasn't the life he wanted. So not my children, and I didn't abandon them. Like
No, because also I heard you say you joined the Circus Soleil, and he was with you in that circus.
No, it was another person. I ended up So I ended up leaving all of that life behind, ended up leaving Microsoft also, and I created a company called Infinite Connections. Okay. And that basically we were producing really large events and such. And then in there, I ended up working with a circus and kind of became a co-owner. And then I was dating somebody else who looked at me and said, hey, I really want to go on tour with Cirque du Soleil. And we're like, all right, let's manifest and let's make this happen. And so we did. So that's how I came to Europe. I left the United States on a tour with Cirque du Soleil.
Great. Okay, fine. So now you've gone this world, gone to Spain, and from Spain, a friend has said you come to Italy, you can stay here for 6 months, and you've been here for been there for the last 15 years.
Exactly.
So, how has it been for the last 15 years? What have you experienced? How has it changed you and helped you to transform? What are you seeing? And especially about the underground cave. Now you say these are all hand done. So
this is, we built a temple into the mountain starting in the late 1970s. About 1978 was when we started to build this temple in secret. And we just started to literally digging into the mountains, creating one hall at a time. And now it is 7/8 halls, beautifully decorated. Each one, it's basically the book of humanity, but humanity across every dimension you could possibly think of, and the whole of humanity, including all of our ancient civilizations, not just, modern times.
Okay. Now, I'm going to divert a little bit and then come back to you. Where did they get the knowledge of all humanity?
Great question.
I'm going to divert a bit because you said something like,
yeah.
Where did they get the knowledge from across those dimensions for all humanity? How did that knowledge come to them?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So Damanhur is founded by a spiritual founder named Falco Tarasaco, who passed in 2013, and just a few years after I was here. So I'm super happy that I had the chance to arrive when he was still alive. So, and Falco was, okay, so here's what I always tell people. You believe what you want to believe, okay? What's true is what's true for you, because for us, we believe that there is no such thing as absolute truth in the world of form, because truth is always a crystal with many facets, and each one of us understands and believes it. So Falco was an avatar who came so he ended up coming into the world of form, into this world through with the idea of helping us on the timeline, because the timeline that we were on was a timeline that was basically for destruction, as we already know it, right? We're in a particular time. We're in a place where the status quo is just going to take us against the brick wall. And so he comes back 600 years into this period of time where we are right now, with the intention of completing the work that is necessary to divert the timeline, to really help humanity find a new timeline that's going to take us into where we need to go so that we can develop and evolve. As you said, we're all created from the same source material. All are light workers that are working on the exact same mission, just all of us with our own particular flavor. So we call it the Project Vine, as like the whole that everybody is working on. And we have our sliver. We have the little piece, and the temples of humankind, the creation of them was one of our pieces, because it is an anchor of energy that has a motor that does all kinds of different things.
And it's there to help us raise our consciousness into the fifth and up into the different dimensions.
It's also there. Absolutely.
We
Yeah.
were on a thing of destruction, and it's like, bring us back so that we can evolve and raise to those dimensions. Okay.
Correct. And it's also there to help us recover a lot of the spiritual technology that we've had in the past. For example, in Atlantean times and in Mu times, there was a very high level of
Very much
spiritual technology
energy
evolution. The
that
problem was we didn't evolve ourselves enough to not
yes,
fall prey to the same dangers that we're still running into today.
yes,
So
yes,
the temples of humankind also exist to help us recover a lot of that technology so that we can
energy.
bring it back into the peoples, not just for us here in Damanhur, but also we work with a lot of different groups, and especially a lot of shamanic tribes and a lot of natives peoples and indigenous peoples from around the world who are also carrying pieces that are getting lost along the way. So
Right.
the temples of humankind and the extension, the other temples, we have several temples here, are also places to house knowledge that not just comes from us, but we're also inviting peoples of the world who are losing their spaces and
Yeah.
need a place to be able to store, magically speaking,
Record.
their
Yes,
knowledge. We
yes,
want them to bring it here so that they know that if anything should happen, they can come back and recover it. In other words, it's not for our use, it's
no,
for it to be there,
mankind.
and their people can pick it up whenever it's necessary. Kind of like being a giant hardware and
Yes,
giant hard drive that we hold
yes,
the space for them.
yes. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for explaining that. Now, coming back to you. So you've been there for 15 years.
Yep.
How has, now coming back, how has it affected you? How have you transformed? How are you seeing things now? And how are you using that knowledge through to other people?
Yeah, the beautiful thing about what Damanhur, a lot of people ask me, well, you already had a spiritual practice, you had been initiated in multiple schools, like what made you decide to take this initiatic path and kind of make that your primary path? And I always talk about the fact that I'm a person who sees the big picture. Like, I'm a projector in human design. I'm somebody who likes to look at, okay, what does this look like going into the future, and how do we move that? That's my gift, and I'm a bridge. I bring you from where you are to where you want to be, or to where we need to be. That's kind of me as an archetype, and that's what I do. And the thing I love about Damanhur is, as you said earlier when you were saying the knowledge, our knowledge is kind of using spiritual physics, is this kind of cosmology of the universe. What does the universe look like? What are the laws of the universe? How do things fit into form? Why is it that we have a world of form? What is the ultimate game of life that we're all playing? How is it that we all these types of questions, spiritual physics really helps us answer. And when you couple that with my Kabbalistic background, which is kind of the archetypal building blocks inside of the world of form, right?
Yes.
Then for me, it became this, oh my goodness, now I can see the map. Like, not just the map of where I am, but the map of where we need to go, at least from my perspective. For me, what's my part to play?
Yes.
And how is it that I work with others? So here is also where I started my plant reawakening. So not only did I have my spiritual reawakening, I had a plant reawakening, which was to really connect into the plant world. And that's really the focus that I have now, is working very closely to create a living ecosystem, a place where all of our talents, all of our skills, all of our shadows, all of our personalities, even those things we keep saying to ourselves we need to discard or get rid of or transform, instead are all, how do they get used? Because in an ecosystem, nothing is ever wasted. There is no garbage can.
No, you just, it's like taking the negative and turn it into a positive.
Yeah,
because
finding
the
place.
negative, so-called, is always there. You can't just throw it away. It's there floating somewhere. So it's how to take that and transform it. And oddly enough, as I'm saying that is what we're doing with ourselves, because we became disconnected, and we're suffering, and because we're making the wrong decisions, and our perspectives have changed because we became disconnected. We're now reconnecting and changing back and reconnecting and being that which we should. So it's the same thing over again from every perspective of life. It's to take that negative and make it into a positive, because it's there. It never goes away. But how to transform it to be a positive thing. So you're talking about plants, and especially I saw when you said musical plants. There's so many different. Please tell us how you now use those plants and how they can affect us as humankind to help us.
Yeah, so I work really closely with plant beings, with the plant world, because as both, well, not both, as mentor. So literally having plant guides that help me better understand how is it that this world is created. Because I mean, seriously, who knows how to create worlds better than plants? I mean, 470 million years of creating worlds, of transforming, as you said, of evolving spaces. So if anybody knows how to evolve, to be resilient, to be strong, to know how to use everything, to be aware of what's around you, to not run away from your problems because they're sessile there. You root it into the ground, can't run away. So I really work very closely with plants as mentors, as models, but also as co-creators. The idea of what changes in our world, because as I was talking with somebody recently, and she was an eco-psychologist, and we got into a wonderful conversation. And one of the things that really resounded for me is she says, you know, the disconnection from nature is the ultimate trauma. It is the ultimate trauma that we've collectively experienced, and that we're working so hard to reconnect, because there's a piece of ourselves that is like missing when I don't tap into the fact that I am an animal. So there's my animalness in that nature part. And then there's my plantness, the fact that I'm also fungi, that I'm also microbes, that I have all these different parts of myself that are really what makes me up as a human being. So I am a living ecosystem of myself, but also I am immersed in relationships. And again, who knows better how to create relationships of all types? Who knows how to use competition or how to create co-creative mutualisms better than plants? So that's why I love working so closely with them, which is not the same as, sure, you know, yes, there is, you know, plants as edible and things like herbalism. That's always a great piece. But for me, step even beyond, it's how does a plant become a partner? For example, Noelle is my business partner. Or, for example, I have other plants that I work with in completely different ways, where I might have one plant that's helping me better understand my physical body. I have, and how do my senses work, and how do I embody feeling and knowing and understanding, kind of bypassing the mind. I have plants that are helping me with things like my business, to look at it more as a co-creative ecosystem that continuously grows and goes through its different cycles. So there's different plants that I work with, both internally as well as externally. And with my clients, who most of them are neurodivergent and, again, multi-potentialites or multi-passionate people, it's about understanding that all of those passions can be useful when you understand how they weave together. So again, creating that harmonic ecosystem that allows you to communicate with others and to interact with others without ever losing your authentic self.
It is how to embody that which has been put on the earth for us to use,
exactly,
lost, to help us to live on this earth and to be as we should be. And it's remembering all those things that we've discarded, to say, no, they were there and they're always there. Go back to them.
Exactly.
You said something very interesting. You work with people, and you work with neurodivergents and other people using, I take it, different types of plants to help them to how can I put this? Because I know everything is energy, everything is vibration.
Right.
We are energy, we are vibration. Plants are energy, everything. The table, the chair is also energy, just vibrating in a different way. So as I understand it, by using the plants, which is energy, and we are partially plant as well as animal, and it is about using the energy of who we are to connect with the energy around, so that we can coordinate and flow in harmony, so that we can live the life we're meant to live in harmony, peace, and joy. It's connecting and just not just fitting in, but harmonizing, so that we flow. That's the word. So we flow ceaselessly. Am I correct?
Yeah, and I would add a different element to that, which is one more piece of it, which is, you've mentioned harmony a lot. Harmony is one state, and we tend to think of disharmony as, again, going back to like our human conditioning that says something is good and something is bad. But in reality, when you look at harmony, which is stability to a certain extent, instability is where you have growth also. So
Yes.
when you work with plants closely and you realize that, again, everything is natural, every part of me is natural, you start to look at instability not as, oh, this is good and this is bad, but more of what is the emergence that happens in the instability. And then how do I harmonize that and integrate that back into where I am so that I'm constantly growing? Because if I'm always in harmony, if I'm always stable, I don't grow. I'm great. And like you said, there is a peacefulness there, but there's also no growth and no expansion. Expansion requires you to destabilize things. And so what I love about working with plants is, as you said, flow is the important piece, is feeling super comfortable in the instability, because that's resilience, right? Resilience says, oh my gosh, everything is chaotic right now, but I know that this is going to take me somewhere. And I know that I can like ride this wave and be in it and guide the synchronicity to where it's supposed to go, even if it's uncomfortable or maybe it feels like it's wrong. In other words, things like, how do I use my destructive tendencies in a way that is useful to the overall ecosystem that I'm creating? So it's kind of a way for you, regardless of whether or not you're a big picture or a small picture person, always feeling the connection to the big picture, to the bigger ecosystem, and then finding your spot and the way that you're supposed to interact with it and flow through it. Exactly. And that's what I love, because as a person who did spend a lot of her life thinking that she was wrong, thinking that she was too much, thinking that she, had all these negative traits, that she had all these things that she did that were wrong, that were bad, that you had to get rid of, that, when I finally sat in a forest here in the Sacred Woods Temple and looked around and was very clearly shown and told, hey, you're looking at this all wrong. Nothing about you is wrong. Nothing about you is to be discarded. Everything has its use, even the thing that you are most critical about, or you think is most ugly about you, or that's most destructive, or that people have been telling you all your life is bad and that you should never use that or you should never be that. All of that is useful. You just haven't learned how to use it or where to use it. So it's really about mastery of your talents. And that's what I love working with. Like, I love being that bridge that helps you see that there's a path for it, and then helps you, kind of holds your hand as you walk that path, and is only there to be a mirror, to help you sort of see it, to, kind of give you some safeguards, to create that safe space so that you can kind of, to a certain extent, fall apart inside of it, so that you can find your true essence, that true nature of you, and then start to learn, oh, okay, this part around me that my family in their conditioned state has been telling me is useless or bad, or whatever terminology we want to use. If I was to use it like this over here, it actually becomes something super useful.
Yes. I totally understand you. And that is such a wonderful thing for us to stop and look at and think about. Because when you use something, or your attitude or your actions in one sense can look as being negative and destructive and harmful, but if you take that and use it in another way, that same thing can turn to be positive. And to bring that down, it's when I say to people, it's like a knife. And people say, oh, a knife is destructive. And I'll say, but why is it destructive? A murderer will take a knife to kill you, but a surgeon will take a knife to stab you as well, but to go in and help you.
Exactly, to save you.
And a master carpenter can take that special knife to carve into wood and create such a beautiful carving and workmanship. It's not the item that you use, it's how you use it,
How you
and
use it.
behind your using it,
Absolutely. How you use it, when you use it, and how much of it you use.
and why
Absolutely.
you use it.
Nailed it.
I mean, in another instance, you can have somebody who's coming to kill you or whatever you, and you know, unless you do something, you know they're not going to stop, and you'll take that and stab them. Okay, but that is not what you wanted to do. But that is self-preservation. So
Mhm.
again, it's why are you doing it? How are you doing it? And with what mentality, and from what perspective. And so one thing in one way is very destructive and ugly and painful, but in
Right.
another way it could be life-saving and so beautiful and bringing
Mhm.
beauty and harmony.
Yep. And it's
And
amazing that when you figure that out for yourself, it's so beautiful to see
yes,
how much more tranquility you are, like
yes,
tranquil you are, because you no longer have this judgment voice over
yes,
you that is trying to give you these absolutes. You're
yes,
allowed to evaluate the current situation, like you said, and say, am I stabbing you because it's self-preservation? Am I stabbing you because I want to harm you? Am I
yeah,
stabbing you because of I feel like this is the only way to save you? Like
mm,
there's lots of reasons that it could be. But when
yeah.
you take away that human judgment and you're allowed to see the situation for what it is, your actions become so much easier to take
Thank
because
you.
you don't have that, like, you use doubt, but
Yes,
doubt becomes also a tool where it's like,
yes.
okay, what am I doing this for? Why am I saying these words? Or why am I stabbing somebody with my words?
Is it
What
to
is my
help?
motivation?
Is it to help, to bring
Mhm.
relief, to bring happiness, to free somebody from pain? What is the reason? Because we're
Exactly.
all here to share, and our actions should be not just for ourselves, but to help others. Because when you do that and everybody's doing that, you get that beautiful harmony and selflessness.
Yep. And
And
this is where plants are beautiful partners for this type of stuff because, for example, we were talking about stabbing, right? And you have some a spirit guide, a spirit wild plant like stinging nettle. And stinging nettle is stinging, right? But if I have arthritis or if I have certain kinds of pain, that stinging actually creates relief.
yes,
Or that stinging might tell me I'm not supposed to go in that direction. That's not a good thing.
yeah,
Or that stinging might be me telling you something that really hurts you, but in the bigger picture brings out a part of you that is growth, that is evolution, that switches. So every plant has a series of characteristics, and in particular want to work with us to understand that there is no plant that you look at, even poison ivy or some other plant that we think of in such negative terms, in
yeah,
the ecosystem that they're in, has a use.
yes.
And so it's a matter of helping you say, oh, okay, if I'm useful in my ecosystem, I just have to find out how I'm useful and where I'm useful and how do I work on those pieces of myself.
Do you know, I say to people, and I've always believed this, each time something happens in the world and they say, oh, this is dangerous and there's no turning back, or, once you do this, it can never be reversed. And I say to them, no, that's wrong. Because I don't believe that the creator who created us gave us, it created everything for us to use so that we can change, we can grow, we can reverse, because it's part of learning. We
Mhm.
will make a step, and it could be, for want of a better word, when I say a not a good step, it could be a step that it creates a negative effect that we don't like. So now, how do we now change that? We have to change way, and it's not something that is going to be damaging forever. No, we because we're energy, so we just
Right.
have to change that to reconfigure that and to put things right and to rebalance. So there's nothing that cannot be altered or changed or corrected. It's just that we don't know it yet.
Right.
We have to find it out. But everything is there for us, and it's part of the growth and learning.
Absolutely. And this is also the beauty of living in community, right? We always say from a nature perspective, we evolve faster together, right? The whole idea of any species that is in harmony and co-creation with other species will always evolve faster. And so living in community everything is a mirror.
Yes.
Everything comes right back in your face. Like there is no hiding from it. And so you have to create relationships. We make tons of mistakes. Sometimes people come to visit us here in Damanhur and they're like, oh, but you, and we're like, yes, because we're not here to be perfect. We're here to learn, like you said. And so we are showing all sides of ourselves here. It's not about hiding and trying to like look perfect. It's when you live in a house, like I lived in a house, the biggest house I lived in was 31 people, including myself. 30, when you live with 30 people, trust me, your buttons are getting pushed all over the place, all over the place. You know, somebody is always getting hurt or angry or this or the other. And it's amazing to see, you know, once again, you find that you start to understand the other people, you start to see what does flow look like. Harmony, forget it. Flow, on the other hand, that is an amazing kind of way of how do I ride the synchronicity with this group? How do we create projects together? And so here in Damanhur, we're always interacting in lots of different ways, socially, spiritually, like pushing ourselves through change, moving into personal transformation. Like all these things are always right there in front of you. And now, especially where, you know, I live in the first city, which is again in Italy, which is where we were born, in this area in the Valchisola Valley. But we have places, we have initiates all around the world, and I work very closely with them as kind of the you might say the representative for Damanhur International. And I love it because now I have things that push me outside of my cultural bounds, right? I already grew up with two cultures. Then I've lived in multiple other countries. But for example, I was just in Croatia last weekend, and I love it because as I'm sitting there and talking with my brothers and sisters, initiates, we have a common base, but we have very different cultural references. And I'm in talking to them, I get to see myself more clearly across those bounds, and I get to see how is it that we're all working on this, you know, unified project, that, you know, these parts of ourselves in this Vine project that we're working on. And at the same time, again, be true to me, true to them, like respect and flow and all these different pieces. Yeah. And it's wonderful when it comes to thinking about it again, like a big ecosystem of how am I creating all this, and really working hard on the idea of relationships. We as humans have very limited relationships. We try to put these labels on them and put all these social norms on them and all these pieces. And instead, the natural world, especially the plants and the trees, hold the memories of many other archetypes of relationships that we've lost. And so working closely with them, also, we get to regain that. And there's a richness in life, because when I don't think that my relationship with everybody is about pleasing them, or when I don't think that every relationship has to be constructive, but instead they have a wider breadth of, for lack of a better term, use, or of the way that I'm supposed to interact, of understanding, all of a sudden I have a richness, because even the person that I barely talk to, but that I know that there's a relationship in there, enriches my life, even if I don't see them or I have to talk to them every single day.
Yeah. And it's about realizing that because we're all coming from the same fabric, and we are all coming, and we are the same fabric, just flowing in different ways. It is, as you said, if it's somebody that you don't talk to, it's okay.
Exactly.
Because you're all the same anyway. Just because you don't talk to them, don't think they're any lesser. Just that you don't talk because of something else, or what, or if it's not your time, it's your time to flow somewhere else and not here. But yet you're all part, and it's fine.
Yep. And you spoke earlier, I mean, when we were speaking earlier, you talked about, you know, that we're all incarnated in this moment for these reasons and all these pieces. And for us, reincarnation is a big part of our understanding our past lives, our concurrent lives, our present lives, our past lives, our future lives, like understanding that and realizing that sometimes the passing that we just had, you and I, maybe in this life, was just to pass each other something that in another life is going to be this super central piece of our lives. But in this life, it's just a matter of, oh, we need to kind of passing, like two ships passing in the night, and there's going to be an exchange of something that is going to put a signature into our lives that we're going to be able to pick up on in another life. And so once again, like I had said, seeing this overall cosmic map and looking at it from a perspective that is not about just one life and one location and even one planet, but looking at it as this giant cosmology, it totally transforms. It gives you also a peace, because you realize you're like, okay, this is a long-term game, right? I have things I'm supposed to do now, and I have purpose, and I have a place, and I know what is important. And then I also know that this purpose and this thing that I'm accomplishing in this life is going to fit into something bigger.
Yes. And it's going to fit into something bigger, not necessarily in this lifetime, but it could be in another life. I just want to stop there a minute, because we just, and I've not done this on my program before, but it's something that we need, people really need to understand and to think of. And we're constantly talking about it, how change, our transformation. And you brought it out so much in saying that not necessarily in this life, but in another life, in another realm, whatever, which then says there is no death. There is just a change and a transformation.
Correct. And
I think this idea of death is stopping a lot of us from living the life we're meant to live, and it's making us live in fear, as though this is the only thing that is there. But when we do think bigger, because you're talking about plants and the music and the this and the avatar, and came into this life and go to the next lifetime, and there are films there with avatar, telling you about, but we need not to look at it as fiction, but it's actually reality. Atlantis knew about this, and this is why you say we lost a lot of knowledge and we didn't take it and grow with it, so that we should have been farther ahead now as humans. But you've had people come in from different realms to come and help us again, to put us on the right path, so that we can evolve and reach the evolvement that we should be in those dimensions and thinking and conscious levels. And therefore that tells you that, and I said, not necessarily we will use that knowledge in this lifetime, but in the next lifetime, which tells you that there's more than one life. And in fact, it's not just more than one life. There is just one life. It's endless. But we have brief moments when we switch from one to another, but it's endless. And in truth, there is no death.
Yeah, here in Damanhur, this is a huge topic for us. For example, what we call the books of the initiate, the first few books that Falco published was called, Dying to Learn, Learning to Die, Dying to Learn, and Reborn to Live. Because it's really about, there's also Seven Scarlet Doors, which is part of that whole sequence. But these are books that he was very adamant of, like, preparing for a good death is what gives you a good life. Because when I know and I'm comfortable with all of that part, as you said, I start to really live. So we have an entire kind of even grouping of work that we do to prepare ourselves for, where it is that we're going to incarnate again, working with our children as also incarnations, and also for ourselves, how do we prepare, how do we really live a good life in order for us to be so comfortable with that other part, in order to live really well, and also to recognize that each one of us has, again, a piece, like you said, in this life. And for some of us, that piece in this life is huge. For others, the piece is really small, because maybe we'll have a different piece in another life. But it's about really getting comfortable with the fact of, I just have to do my piece. And if every time in every incarnation I do my little piece, no matter how big, no matter how small it is, and I live well and I prepare myself, and I know that I'm going to come back into, especially for us, to come back into what we call the popolo, the people, like to be connected back in. We think of ourselves as corks that are kind of floating on the ocean, and that we're all gravitating towards, this new Atlantis, this Damanhur. And so if we know that, and you get really comfortable with that, then again, everything starts to flow, because now I can start to see, and I don't have to live in that fear, which, as you said, we as human beings live in a lot of fear. We live in fear of evolution, because evolution is blind. We don't really know what it looks like. Change is super fearful for us. For example, Damanhur is divided into different bodies. Like, so the spiritual body, obviously what we call meted action, was the first one to be born. And then the social, because we realized that to really live your spirituality, you have to live it with others. Because if you just hide in your room, then who knows?
No, you're not growing.
You're not growing.
Not
And so,
evolving.
and then the third one that came a few years later, because we were born in like the late 1970s, we're 50 years old. Actually, we celebrate our 50th year this year. And the third pillar or third body, which was what we call the game of life. And the game of life really only has one objective, which is to change. They are a body that is all about instilling change. How can I force you, move you, nudge you, encourage you, protect you, but also that the idea that you feel ready for change at any time, that you feel flexible, that you feel so comfortable in who you are. And then the last one is the Tecmercato, which is more the personal development side. But how do you feel so comfortable in your skin that you can easily change, that you can prepare? And one of those changes, as you said, is death. Death is one of those changes.
Yeah. I made some short videos some years ago, and I was talking about this game of life. And I was saying to people, do you understand about this game of life and this journey of life? And some say it may be a game or whatever, but it's this span. Do you understand what life is about? And It is about growing. And to grow, you have to change, you have to transform and understand, and a lot of us don't realize that. It's not just be born, go to school, have a good education, if we can, have a job, have the house, have the kids, grow old, that's it. No, it's not that at all. Oh, Tigrilla, you're beautiful. Now, you with your plants and so, I have a special interest in this. For neurodivergence, and I know everybody's different. So, and for those who are listening, because this is a big thing at the moment on this earth, and it's not that you're broken, not at all. It's just that you're flowing differently, and it's how to get that balance back in that helps the individual. And am I right in saying there are plant medicines that can help neurodivergence in their different fields, because it's a different span, to regulate themselves and help them?
So that's not really the focus that I have. I mean, there are people that work in that way. My focus is more of thinking of yourself as a plant. If I think of myself as I am nature, then what is it that my neurodivergence is here to help me with? And how is it that I'm supposed to work with it? So, for example, for some people, it's, communicating in a certain way. For other people, it's the way that they do logic and the way that they look at problems and solve them. For some, it's really about understanding yourself very deeply, and then thinking of yourself again in that ecosystem plant model where it's like, okay, I'm sessile. My mind works the way I am. I'm not going to change necessarily the way my mind works. But again, looking at it as a tool, it's like, okay, what is this tool good for? And so it's really about getting deep into the heart of what is it that my tool, the way that my mind works, is actually good for, and how do then I create the relationships and the environments, thinking again like a plant, how is it that I create the environment and the relationships that help me best utilize all my tools, rather than what many neurodivergents have been forced to do, which is think about it in what we kind of think about as neurotypical, which is really not typical at all, but that's another story.
No, yes.
So it's not about necessarily doing anything to change, but on the contrary, it's about enhancing it by taking off a little bit the filters and then saying, okay, if I sit in who I truly am, the way my mind really, really works, then how do I learn how to use that to its fullest ability and past that, like, communicate and relate with others around me without losing my essence, but yes, getting my essence across. So
and living the life they're meant to live.
Absolutely.
Live it.
Exactly. It's living it, because you incarnated with this way of thinking. And unfortunately, the past world, for many, many different reasons, were created with boxes and binary, like you have to kind of fit inside of this because this is how everything moves, right? Thinking like a train. But once cars came around, the idea of a train, and especially off-roading, came around. Now all of a sudden we didn't have to worry so much about the roads the way they are. I mean, we can move and zigzag and change, and I can switch from riding a bicycle to jumping onto a car to getting onto a train to doing all these things. And so neurodivergence to a certain extent is that. It's, I'm trying to find what is the vehicles that you best work with, where are the different, and a lot of that comes in things that we've been told are hobbies that we need to get rid of. So for example, I said, I have a background in the arts. I'm not I mean, I have been, but I don't do like a professional musician. I don't get up on a stage and I don't sing publicly and I don't play the instruments that I learned and all these different aspects. But that's not because anything was wrong or because those weren't useful. On the contrary, all of my training and singing and all of my singing lessons that I took for many years, and the piano, which was my primary instrument in college, all of these taught me a series of skills that while I don't use them in their direct form, like I don't sit and do scales, I don't sit and, you know, sing scales every single day, but it taught me a whole series of skills that I apply very much today in the way that I operate, because I use that musical harmony that I learned into the way that I do business, in the way that so what I work at is more looking at what are the passions that you have or that you have had, and what is it that you absorbed, right? That whole, I lived that moment because I might use it in this life or in next life. What is it that you absorbed and embodied into your body from whatever that passion was, whether we're talking about basket weaving or, you know, you beading, or you were making art, or whether or not you were an accountant in a previous incarnation of this lifetime, you know, whatever it might be, what are the things that you stick with you from that? And then how does that apply to whatever situation that you're in right now?
And how you can use that
exactly
to the better flow of your life and to the
exactly. So I believe that all passions are super important. I don't believe that there's anything of a distraction. For example, I talk about in one of the episodes of my podcast that I'm one of those people, and I know several neurodivergents that are like this, which is I have a tendency to, like, I'll literally be writing a sentence and then mid-sentence, I'll get up and I'll do something else. And then, and it looks like I'm distracted, right? Because I just left something hanging in a sentence, but I might go and get my tea, and then I'll see that my floor is dirty, and I'll clean my floor. And then I'll come back and I'll sit at my desk and I'll start working on something. And then I'll turn around and I'll see that hanging sentence and I'll finish the sentence. And somebody might have tried to tell me, oh, you're supposed to focus, like do this one thing at a time. But my mind doesn't work that way. And in the end, when I look at my list, and I always have lists because that's another way I operate. When I look at my list at the end of the day, I would say that 90% of the time I get everything done on my list. Now, does it get done one at a time? No.
It's getting done your way, the
exactly.
way it works. Yes.
Exactly. And that's really what I work with. I work a lot with the idea of, I don't care how your mind works, and I give you a very safe space for you to let out everything, because you've probably boxed it for most of your life. Let it all out, and then let's put it all out there, and then let's look at it and be like, okay, I see that you are talking to me in this way. How does that connect to this thing over here? And they'll be like, it doesn't. And then I'm like, really? Why did you use them these words and these words? And it's like, oh my goodness, that is the same thing, just in two different planes. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what it looks like to me too. It's like, okay, let's take that and apply that over here. Oh, okay. Now all of a sudden it all starts to work, and you start to realize why you were a race car driver for 10 minutes and why instead you were making flowers for another 2 years. I don't know, but you learned things from them and they apply now.
Yeah. Absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Tigrilla, you have your own podcast. Have you written books? Do you work remotely with other people? And so let's hear about that, because I'm sure there's people who are listening today and thinking, oh my gosh, I'd like to connect with her. So tell us how people can connect with you. What are you doing? Books, all the rest. Come on, let's hear about you.
So I have my own podcast, as you said. It's called Reconnect with Plant Wisdom, which I adore, because we get into all these topics in super deep ways with the plants that are helping us through them. And then also I have an online ecosystem called the Naturally Conscious Community. So I work both one-on-one with people And always, even if we're working one-on-one, we always work in group. And in group, you have this safe environment. It's off the regular social media platforms. It is a place where we can explore human-plant relationships at 360 degrees. So book clubs and classes and, self-study, as well as a writing and creativity group, because so much of this comes through the creative side, because if it could come through logic, then I would have found it already, but logic isn't going to get me there. So I need kind of more creative side. So inside of the Naturally Conscious community, we have a whole free environment, plus all the other areas that allow you to explore yourself in these human plant relationships, or you as plants as well, and as a being of nature in so many different ways. So even when I work one-on-one with people, which is my favorite, I love being that container, right? That holder of that sacred space and that super safe space, because most neurodivergents, especially if they're older, like us, they've lived boxed up. It's pisses me off, actually. I get really angry about it. And I'm like a big defender of the righteousness of like, I am here to say it is okay. And let's make it work type of thing. So even when I work one-on-one, which is mainly in a coaching mentorship type of scenario, we always have the Naturally Conscious community as a place for you to also have other people that you can bounce ideas off of and share thoughts and explore topics through many of these different programs. So everything is on my website, which is just my name, tigrillagardenia.com.
Oh, great.
And super easy. And there you will find links to one-on-one work with me, mentorship, as well as the Naturally Conscious community and the podcast and all the other things that I do.
Fine. So, and have you written books?
I have. Well, I have the draft of a book. This has been my challenge. So people sometimes ask you, like, what's your still big challenge that you're working on? Book writing is my challenge, because I love to speak, as you can tell. I love speaking, and I do write quite a bit, but for whatever reason, the long form book is challenging me. So actually, you can't, if you're watching the video, you'll see that there's like a wall here with a bunch of different things. This is actually, believe it or not, the outline of the book, plus my personalities, but that's another topic again. But all of that is right there. And it's just a matter of like getting it done.
That's fine. As you can say, as people have heard you say, they can connect with you at tigrillagardenia.com.
Correct.
Connect with you there. You do one-to-ones, and probably just have a chat with you to see how you can help them. So please, if what she has said, I know it's triggered a lot of things with me, because it's the nature, it's the plant, which really resonates with me. Please do contact her. Tigrilla, before we say goodbye, just leave us with a golden nugget that you can leave with people to them to think about, or point them in the right direction. How would you advise?
Yeah, my advice is to always think for yourself, like think everything about me, no matter what it is always useful if I find when to use it, where to use it, and how much of it to use. So every single talent, every idea I've ever had, every single characteristic I have, every single passion I've ever followed, all of it has its place, as long as you create that ecosystem and learn how to use it when, how much, and where. Okay.
And could you just mention the place again where you are staying? Because I've heard about this. I heard about this many years ago, and it's in Italy. And so when you said, oh yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, I live in Damanhur, Damanhur, and also another easy way of finding it is by looking up the temples of humankind.
Beautiful. Okay, so
and you're welcome to come visit anytime. Just contact me, and I'm happy to help you kind of come over here and see what it's all about. Because seriously, it's Hogwarts. It's Hogwarts.
To me, that would be fun. I think I might just take you up on that.
Yeah, I had a phone call today from the Game of Life, because we're working on a project together, and he was like, so one of the heads of the Game of Life was like, okay, so we're going to be doing this thing, and I need your help, because we're going to do this and with this, and we're going to do this game and this game. And I was like, seriously, you are now incarnating Hogwarts even more. Like, Even more.
Tigrilla, thank you so much for being my guest today. It's been absolute fun. And as I said to everybody, you know how to contact her, Tigrilla Gardenia at .com. So
Yep.
please, something's telling me something's wrong here. Oh, I understand. So please do contact her if today's program is it's made you smile as much as it's made me smile, and it's made me go off and come back and think yes. So for now, Tigrilla, bless you and thank you so much. And to everybody who's tuned in, thank you. From Italy, Tigrilla, goodbye. From here, London, bye everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for
Ciao.
listening today and watching. Bye for now.